particular presentation, as we explore the depths of water and how water relates to us as a scientific element, molecule, nutrient, as it relates to us in regards to our health, our well-being, our mind, also on a more kind of deeper, conscious, spiritual association. Yeah, we're also gonna explore the presence of water on the planet and to our kind of local environment in terms of the atmosphere that we're in and this particular solar system that we're in. Yeah, and we're gonna go on that kind of magical, mystical journey with the water. So hopefully by the end of it, you know, you just kind of got that richer reminder of the importance of water, and it should just make you want to go and take a glass of water when we finish. Do you know what I mean? And it's not that you have to know or absorb exactly everything that we go over. Yeah, but as long as it goes into a degree, it will come back out, you know, in whatever way it needs to. But yeah, I just hope to remind us as we go into these seasons that require us to be very health conscious and, you know, very aware of what we're putting in and how we're flushing out. I think it's always a very timely conversation. Going to look at what water is, biological correspondences. As I said, we'll visit the science. We'll talk about the language that surrounds water in our everyday life. We'll dive into the ancient knowledge. We'll swing through the cosmological correspondences. We'll flow with the memory. See, I'm just trying to use the language, but and obviously we're going to get to that important part of the segment where, you know, a lot of people have questions: is what water is good to drink and what water is not good to drink, what's healthy, what's not, and what can I do to you know, make any particular water healthy. That's a very important part. And then what does it all mean? Basically a question that you will ask and answer for yourself. So we're just going to start, we're just going to go straight in with the facts that surround water. Okay, good. All right. So the facts being, depending which specialist practitioner's body of thought you're dealing with, the underlying fact is your body is composed of between 50 and 75% water. Obviously, this changes in accordance to a few factors like body weight, whether you're male or female, how hydrated your diet is, yeah, how much you're exercising, how much water you're retaining, how much you're releasing on a daily. But generally, it's agreed across the whole spectrum that we're up to 75% water at any given time over the course of our life. That means you are more water, up to 3 parts water, than anything else. Yeah. Now, if you go into a bit more of a molecular science, it's long been out there that at a molecular level, your body is composed of up to an over 90% water. That just meaning that even though they say your body's 75% water, even the molecules that they claim are not water are basically based of water to a degree. So on a wholesome level, as beings, we are up to at a molecular level over 90% water, which is, you know, it's quite astonishing to think, especially when we consider things like, our skeleton and how much of that is what we consider bone or dry bone. It's not. Moisture dominates every aspect of our being. If we go to the eyes, we're dealing with 95% water. Heart 75%, muscle 75%. The blood plasma alone is over 90% water. The lungs 85%, kidneys, brain, they're all well above the 70% water mass mark. Yeah. And I always like using the eyes because we pay so much reference to the concept of seeing and what it is to see. And we actually see through water. And we actually refer to the big kind of reservoirs of water that separate nations as the sea. And when you look at the eye, symbolically, it shares the same kind of Vesica Pisces symbol as does the fish, the Pisces symbol. And it's like in a lot of traditions and mystics, the eye it shares its shape with that kind of it's like well, we know it's an orifice, an opening, a portal, yeah. But so do many things that share that shape. Same if we kind of flip it a bit, you know, the portal that we all come through for life shares that same shape in the female anatomy, yeah. And you know, it's just, but that's, you know, getting a bit deeper downstream with things. But just to consider how much of you that is conscious and active and alive right now is operating through water, how much of what you're manufacturing, how much of what you're seeing and how you're seeing it. What does it do? Regulates body temperature, flushes waste material from the body, dilutes harmful concentrations of fluids. Yeah, it's vital in the digestion breakdown, as we went over in the last workshop. Vital to assimilation of nutrients, to the utilization of nutrients. The basis of all the fluid mediums, even your lymph. Now, your lymphatic system we touched on last week is 3 times bigger than your blood system. Yeah, and it's mainly fatty. It's a fatty lipid-based system, still dependent on water. Yeah, water lubricates your joints, builds the saliva and all the other fluids in your body, especially digestive fluids, transports and delivers oxygen throughout your body. As we said, it makes up the blood. Yeah. All these vital functions that go on in the body, the lungs is made of over 85% water. And when we're breathing, when we're talking about the air, we're still talking about a vapor, a moisture. Still talking about the waves. So another kind of interesting and mystical aspect to water is it shows you what you are. Yeah, and I was always astonished at going to a pond or a river or a stream, looking in the water and seeing yourself. And as I kind of grew my appreciation for water, especially in ceremony, you know, it's like water always shows you what you are. It's clear. So all these kind of attributes we associate with water, how transparent it is, how clear it is, and how it reflects everything, because it is in everything and it makes up the majority of everything that is on this earth's surface and the earth's depth. So of course, it reflects you. Of course, it shows you what you are. It shows you that you are it and it is you. I always kind of advertise this book. Very simple, but very powerful and very easy read. Your Body's Many Cries for Water. He was an Iranian famous doctor who got locked up and had a brilliant story, but basically he dedicated a lot of his career to the study of water, and done a lot of studies and a lot of results back in the days when it wasn't so prevalent, the studies of water. And this book really breaks it down. It's great. But I just highlight one of the quotes that, especially these days, easy for people to absorb. I always highlight one of the quotes out of the book. Your body is not sick, it is thirsty. Do not treat thirst with medication. And I think we all get that, but basically saying, before we go claiming that we have a form of disease or imbalance or ailment, yeah, first just do your MOT checks. Yeah, how much water are you getting in? Is your body thirsty or is it sick? Because when your body's thirsty, your function shut down. Everything is dependent on water, like we've just gone over. Yeah, so your mind will become hazy and foggy. You'll find it hard to think. Yeah, your liver will start shutting down and not detoxing at the level it's supposed to. Your kidneys won't be able to filter the crap out of your blood. Yeah, everything, every metabolic function you will not be able to absorb. You will become constipated. All of these day-to-day kind of imbalances that we experience and run to the doctor with, headaches, pounding headaches, 90% of headaches can be cured with water. It's actually just your brain screaming out in dehydration. One of the crimes that we commit on ourselves is we might run to a doctor or a GP, give him our symptoms, and he'll prescribe us medication that will further impact our kidneys and our liver, that will further require water to flush out and to neutralize. And you see how we can get ourselves into this deep hole. Like, a lot of us will take painkillers. A lot of people will take painkillers very regularly. You know, it's part of the handbag furniture. We know all we're doing with taking painkillers is we're basically putting a hand over the mouth of the communication. When your brain's screaming, we call it a headache or a migraine. It is just actually trying to communicate with you that it's in need of hydration. So when you take a painkiller, all we're actually doing is blocking off that communication channel. So we think that pain's gone away. It hasn't gone away. We've just suppressed it. And when it's ready and strong enough to scream again, it will, usually the next day or a few days later. But then we get in this vicious kind of ill health cycle of popping pills or taking medicines for things that only require the most natural universal nutrient or medicine, water. So considering the reflections between us and water, yeah, we've already agreed that the human body is over 70% water on an average lifespan. Yeah, over an average lifespan. When we look at the earth that we're living on, the earth also shares that same pattern ratio. The earth's made of over 70% water at its surface. Then if we look at just like the body, the example I was talking about at a molecular level, because the earth is over 70% water, but if we look at then all of the vegetation that is on top of the earth, for example, a broccoli is over 90% water, so is a strawberry, so is a cucumber. A tree is over 75% water. So everything that is actually on the earth is full of water. So at that level, when we're talking about as a planet, those ratios, those figures, they increase a lot. Even down to the cellular level of your body. Yeah. Your cell comprised of all the different organelles. Remember, last workshop I was highlighting the idea of worlds within worlds. Yeah. So inside your body, you've got a billion different worlds going on at any one time. You're a universe. So when you get down to the cellular level, each cell is another mini universe, isn't it? It's got worlds going on in there. Yeah, organelles. It's got its own organ system. We call them organelles. Yeah. Over 70% of that cell is water-based. The rest, they say, are other matters like the organelles. But even when we get to the organelles within the cells, again, what do we find? Comprised of over 70 to 80% water. And that's what we're talking about, another kind of pathway of looking at this molecular level of things. So what I'm trying to just bring to light here is the patterns throughout the universal order. The earth shares the same pattern ratio to water as we do. Your cells share the same ratio pattern to water as you do as a big body being. So now, elemental level, just looking at it from a scientific point of view, what is water? Water, H2O. All that basically means 2 hydrogen atoms to 1 oxygen atom. Now that don't mean a lot to a lot of people, yeah? And it never does to me when they used to say water's H2O. But if we just dive a little bit deeper to understand, okay, what is this? What are these atoms they are talking about? What are they? Wow. I'll quickly bring up the periodic table. There's over 100 different elements on there, different atoms. And the universe is made of all these over 100 atoms, yeah? However, I watched a presentation one time with it was a Nigerian professor called Dr. Aibo. And he basically broke down how there are not these over 100 odd atoms. Every single atom is just a replication of one, which is hydrogen. And when we go to hydrogen, and some of you might be thinking of the word hydration straight away in reference to water, but when we go to hydrogen, hydrogen has the elemental number of 1, which means it's the first element on the table. Yeah, and why is it number 1? Because it has 1 proton and 1 electron, the simply structured atom out of the whole 100. Yeah. Why is this important? Because what we find is number 2, I don't remember what it is, I think it's lithium or something like that. Lithium is just basically, or the element number 2, is basically an element that has 2 protons and 2 electrons. Then we go to number 3, 3 protons, 3 electrons. When we get to oxygen, number 8, oxygen has 8 protons, 8 electrons. Carbon is number 6, 6 protons, 6 electrons. So what this professor was basically breaking down is that there isn't all these other amounts of atoms. There are just only 1 atom. And what that atom is doing, hydrogen, is replicating itself or complicating its structure. And when you look at it like that, it's like, oh yeah, makes sense. Because it's just creativity and change, but all coming from the one source. And this starts to mean something a little bit deeper when we dive in. So as we know, hydrogen, the word hydro, comes from the word water. Yeah. So, or means the word water. And when we talk about anything oxygen, oxygens, we're talking about genes. We're talking about something that is life forming or producing. So we've got hydrogen, we've got oxygen. Also, what that number 1 means in the periodic table for hydrogen is it refers to its weight or its order of weight. Now, hydrogen is the lightest atom out of the whole periodic table. Yeah, important because we're going to come to that again. And the word oxygen, oxys just comes from, a lot of these words come from the Greek, which comes from, indigenous cultures before them. But when we talk about oxy or oxys, it's referring to like an acidic substance. And water is the number 1 solvent. And it's interesting because we don't look at water as a potential acid or solvent because it's such a neutralizer. But what water does, it actually breaks things down. Think about when you're washing up. You're using water. Think about when you're drinking water. When you're highly concentrated, you're using water to break things down. It's a solvent. This is just an example of the structure of an element. Hydrogen on the left, oxygen on the right. But what happens with oxygen? They say O2. Oxygen actually forms with another oxygen atom to make a molecule. And that gives it its 8 electrons in the outer shell. Yeah, that all just sounds like science, but it has to kind of bond to another oxygen atom to give it what we call the oxygen molecule, to give it its potential. Now, why do I make reference to the fact that hydrogen is the lightest atom? Because now we know the moon has a very, very strong relationship with water, all the waters of the planet in your body. It charges it, it influences it, it amplifies it, it sways the tides of things. We know that water is made up of 2 parts hydrogen, so it's more hydrogen than it is oxygen. The majority of water is hydrogen. Hydrogen's the lightest atom, number 1, the simplest structure. When we look at the sun is also, it shares that same pattern ratio that we share so much with the cells, with the earth, with the solar system. It's over 70% hydrogen. So then you have to say, hold on a minute. This hydrogen, which is the lightest, and you associate sun with light, yeah? But then when we associate it, light comes in all these kind of very mystical forms. So when we refer to it academically, we talk about light as in intellect and knowledge. When we talk about it spiritually, we talk about enlightenment. When we talk about it physically, or in terms of weather and seasons, we're talking about that which allows us to see. When we talk about it in burdens of weight, we talk about light of being free from heaviness. So then they're all kind of connected. All the different definitions of light kind of share a common denominator, which is associated with kind of insight, with enlightenment, with wisdom, with knowledge, with being able to see things clearly. Yeah, with being lighter in yourself, i.e. operating at a higher vibration. And when we come to water, we know water shares a very special relationship with light and the way it refracts light, which we'll get into a little bit down the line. But when we look at what the sun, the beacon of light on the planet, is made up of, it's made up of 70% of the same molecule or element that water is made up 70% of, hydrogen. We associate the sun with electricity and masculinity due to its charge and its power. Hence we get solar power. And we associate the moon with magnetism and the waters. And we're always kind of told and taught that electric and water don't mix, basically. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because then when you study, we find out how electrical the body is, and then at the same time, the body is over 70% water. Electricity and water mix very, very well. And it's just interesting, we associate the sun with fire, but fire and water don't mix, supposedly. But if you go to the alchemical masters of history, they was always mastering the elements to show how, no, everything is one, everything is everything. But it's just how you kind of bring them into communion with each other. Even the air. So we've looked at the earth and we've discussed its water ratio facts. We've looked at the sun, the fire element, and we've realized that, oh, it's made up of basically water, what water's made up of. Yeah. Now, if we look at the air, obviously water speaks for itself, but we're just going through the elements. But if we look at the air is nothing but vapor and moisture. Yeah. The air, it's like, that's why everything's referred to as waves here. It's like when the vibratory field speeds up in the air, you can see the waves of heat. They're waves because they're composed of something. They're composed of a vapor, of a moisture. That's why you see the reaction when you breathe heat or you breathe out. You can see the same way a cloud will form from the vapors. It's the same way you will see these kind of breath clouds on a cold day when you allow the heat into it, because it's moisture. You see what I'm saying? So even the air is composed and is at some level water. So you see how this idea of light and water have always gone hand in hand, well, depending on the era which we were being educated and the level of science and physics or chemistry that we was being educated at. And this is all important because it all has to come back inwards. We can go on a little journey outside of ourselves to explore the dynamics of water and how magically mystical and prevalent it is. But then what do you do with it? You bring it all back home and realize that, oh, I am the elements. Water is a very dominant force within me. And then we're going to get to how now we can use this water charge, we can use this knowledge. We already know at a physiological level that water is the key component to almost every single function and every single thought that we are having. Every single thought requires the charge and the presence of water in the brain. So we can see our internal environment, our external environment, the universal energy source, even through the cosmos. Again, we talk about the waves, and that's where we'll go into, we can go to pretty much any creation story in history, through religion, through culture. There's always a primordial story of everything coming from the water. Now, a lot of people that tune into this video will be very familiar with the Kemetic or the ancient Egyptian, ancient African creation story, which says that life as we know it was formed out of the primordial dark waters of Nun. That was all there was, the waters of Nun. Today we might say none or nothing. Yeah. But that just means nothingness. But they refer to that nothingness as waves, as water. The Indian creation story, and this is from the Rig Vedas. There was no realm of air, no sky beyond it. What covered it and where, and what gave shelter? Was there an unfathomed depth of water? It was alluding to, and it's agreed upon by the scholars that it's alluding to, there was only water. I don't know if you know anything about the Vedas, but they're written in that kind of poetic form. You see what I'm saying? The Puranas, Vishnu described as having divine colors of water, Kali meaning black, eternal energies. Yeah, so there's always a darkness associated with water as well. And for another kind of discussion, we'll talk about how darkness and light is one, and how we've been completely missold an idea of division here, down here, but darkness being the purest form of light and the source from which all light comes. So what I found is there's always a kind of corresponding association with water and darkness, especially when we talk about a primordial source. In the Genesis Bible, and the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Again, we're getting that deep darkness associated with the original, with the waters. Again, we can go to Mesopotamia, Babylonia, the Sumerians. We can go to the Greeks, you know, with Hydros, the god of water, where again, we get the word hydrating or dehydrating or hydrogen. And then we get old, good Afro Mr. Einstein, who also claimed in his evolution theory, is it not Einstein, sorry, is it Darwin, in the evolution story that we all came from the waters. That's where we started. And the joke is, although that evolution story has a lot to answer to, suggesting that we come from monkeys or primates, I don't know how people stand on that. But there was one aspect where they was actually telling the truth. And I always like to say a lot with these kind of educational forms, dogmas, They hide the truth in lies. You know, they'll give you a deceptive idea of the truth that is built on a real truth. So in this instance, you know, when we go back to how we actually entered this realm, we began as seamen, again, seamen pertaining to people that traveled the waters. Yeah. We started as water breathing organisms, or sperm and eggs that are living in a fluid. Then we grow in a body of water within the mother until the waters burst, the banks and the dams burst, and then we come down the canal. We come through the portal, or the eye, that Vesica Pisces, into another world, where we are then, we take our first breath outside of water. We metamorphoses into air-breathing organisms, still being composed and comprised of pure water, still being completely dependent upon water. And, you know, same with the breast milk. It's just basically pure water with just a bit of fats and sugars. So in that sense, when this Darwin's saying that we came from tadpoles, started as tadpoles in the water, if you look at a tadpole and you look at a sperm cell, yeah, and then the journey that it goes on, and then he said we turned amphibious, and then we left the water and started walking and all of this, he's just telling you the creation story from a human point of view, but he ain't lying, because it relates and corresponds to the creation story of man in general. And the creation story as it pertains to life as we know it, like we're saying, coming from the dark primordial waters, which all of the upstanding and upholding ancient creation stories and cultures allude to. And it's interesting when we're discussing the waters, because this is basically a water planet. And this is one of the maybe the downfalls to us being in such a materialistic age, is because we lose sight then of the other elementals that make up our being and our earth. We're so materialistic, we ain't looking at the majority of what we are surrounded by. We're further looking out than we are looking in what's in-house. And at the moment, it's said that we have explored more of space than we have of our own oceans. The oceans are so deep and vast that we just don't contain the technology appropriate or equipped to go down exploring, because it gets so dark and it gets so pressurized and concentrated that we don't yet have the materials that can sustain that amount of kind of pressure, that amount of joint magnetism, and also see through the darkness, the depths of the darkness. Interesting again, when we look at the patterns, you know, these kind of racial patterns, because it's also said and identified in science that as human beings, we've only really explored less than 10% of our capacity. We're only using less than 10% of our minds. And we've explored less than 10% of the ocean. We've explored less than 10% of the universe. But you see all this capacity for potential. And it's the same with the oceans. One of the reasons why we can't get down there is because of how dark it gets. It gets very dark. But the deeper you go and the darker it gets, the more that comes to life. And I don't know if anyone's ever watched The Blue Planet, but I love that document, that David Attenborough show. It's amazing, because when they did get a titanium vessel that they was able to go and explore the deep with to a certain level, Yeah, they showed you things down there that could have come out of any science fiction book or movie. You saw things that we would otherwise call aliens living freely in the depths of the darkness, and some very unusual looking creatures. And what was more unusual about them is how they formed themselves, how they defended themselves, and how they operated, because most of them, or a lot of them, were using electrical systems. They were using what? Lights. A lot of them, and if you ain't seen it, go and watch it. They could light up their whole body with what we would call like Christmas tree lights flickering, and then they could turn them all off and go invisible if they was coming across a predator. Some of them could generate what we would see as fire, and they would shoot poof, poof, these fire energy balls under the water, again defying the laws of physics. And then some were just weird in a very strange way. But the point is, all these ideas that we have about water and the electrical is so up to date. I would say it's very ignorant and naive that we do not even understand what we are made of. And in correspondence, we do not understand the very planets that we are on. We do not understand what's living here. We do not understand what are in the depths of the soul of the planet, the same way we don't understand what's in the depths of our own souls, the same way we don't understand what is out there. So this is why I'm just encouraging like a kind of conversation that is really trying to direct you to start exploring your own ship, to start really coming into communion with the idea of what you're made of and this magical element, nutrient we call water. Because to know water is to know yourself. And the more hydrated, the more healthy you can be in terms of your water capacity, the more powerful your brain will operate, the more fluid your health will flow, all your systems can function, all your digestive nutrients can be absorbed, all your waste can be eliminated, yeah? All your organs and your glands can operate and produce the secretions needed to anoint you, i.e. the oils and the balms that are secreted from the very sacred cells and the glands of your body. So you don't really know yourself and you haven't really experienced yourself till you've experienced optimum health, till you've experienced optimum function of yourself, your brain, your spirit, your mind, your cells, your organs. And one of the main and one of the simplest forms of nutrients and medicine we can use to bring balance to all of this, we're surrounded by, we are already. But it's so easy the way we've been kind of conditioned through life to not even acknowledge or appreciate water. And it's at this point, I'll just, remind us that water has no taste. It's one of the only things here on this planet I've experienced that is completely neutral. And I used to, but why don't water have a taste? But it's obvious. You ask water, I asked the water. I ain't gonna lie, I was like, yo, what? You just bland so and it's, wow, look at everything that depends on water here. Every animal, every living organism, every plant, every grain of soil. If water had a taste, then it could be judged. Yeah, if it had a taste, maybe the deer would be like, oh dear, not for me. You see what I'm saying? We don't want anything to judge the water, lest they decide that they don't like the water. But then we find that anywhere in the nature, everything is kind of in agreement that the water is key and the water is all and the water is necessary. They will walk 10 to 15 to 50 miles. Birds will fly across a whole nation just to find a good source of water. But then you have humans, high sentient beings, who'll be like, I don't like water, and it has no taste. So you see how kind of far removed we've become from self into, and just by studying the very basic essence of self, which is water. And just like the ocean, when we say the deeper you go, the darker it gets, the more you see, that's the same with we. If you just close your eyes from the externals and train the mind's eye to go deep, you know it gets dark. As soon as we close our eyes, it gets dark. We go into that kind of internal abyss. And then the more we can hold ourselves or ride those currents and flows, the deeper we go into self. With the practice, with the intention of kind of seeing more. And God knows, or, you know, a well-practiced student to this sort of stuff knows that the more they can hold that kind of prayer, that meditative vibe internally, the more that opens up to them. So again, we're dealing with the patterns of nature, we're dealing with the universal patterns, we're dealing with the correlations and the ratios. And just coming into the realization that we share a very kind of majestic, divine phenomenon. Everything is everything. So we've already agreed that hydrogen is the sun. The sun is the counterpart to the moon, but the moon controls the waters, but the sun is made of the molecule that water is made of. And then the moon controls and charges and influences. Water's at the center of it all. Water is the sun. The sun is water. Fire is water. Water is fire. Water is the moon. The moon is water. We go back to the Hermetica teachings of Thoth, Tahuti, Trismegistus, which we know there isn't anything here in terms of scriptural doctrine that has not been built on this knowledge. The law of correspondence. Everything is everything. Everything has a correspondence to everything, which I hope we just really cleared up when looking at the water and its relation to its seemingly opposing forces. But the law of polarity and the law of correspondence, it states law of polarity. Everything is the same, just operating at two different poles. And that's where we get fire and water. It's the same force operating at two different poles, which make it seem like they are very different. The same idea that makes it seem like I am very different to you, or the black man is very different to the white man, or the cat is very different to the dog. But as we go right back into more kind of highly celebrated civilizations, cultures, schools of thought, we see that their approach to life and how they saw things was very different and more wholesome, more unified, which they developed a greater understanding of all things from. Now, there's other levels and depths to water. Yeah, and it starts getting, this is where water becomes an intelligence. We've always known water is a spirit. Water's always been honored as a spirit, the water spirit. Every culture, again, has their kind of deity ascribed to the water. But when we just come to the hard fact science of things, the mystical sciences, water memory is what some theorize as the ability of water to retain memory of substances previously dissolved in it, even when there's a high dilution factor to the point that no molecule of the substance remains in the solution. Wikipedia states that the ability of water memory is the ability of water to retain a memory of substances previously dissolved in it, even after an arbitrary number of serial dilutions. And they go on to say water memory defies conventional scientific understanding of physical chemistry, blah, blah. And the scientific community reject it, even though there's a wealth of scientific studies that prove this. If anyone's familiar with homeopathy, that is that same basic concept that is used in homeopathy. It is where you take a plant or a leaf, a botanical, a herb, and when you basically infused it in the water, you will dilute that water tenfold, 100-fold, until there is no trace of any kind of molecule in that water. But what the water does is retain the memory of the botanical that was in it. And just that fragmented memory alone is enough to boost whatever benefit in the system that plant would offer. Like it's fascinating, and I've used homeopathy myself. I've used it with my children. So it's no myth that water records and memorizes its existence. Yeah. Every single interaction water has on its journey as it flows and runs through life, it records and memorizes. Yeah. There was thousands of studies done with droplets of water and flowers botanicals at the Aerospace Institute of the University of Stuttgart in Germany. Thousands and thousands of studies done that prove this phenomenon, that regardless, if you go and put a drop of water in the ocean and that drop contained any form of botanical at all at any one point, and now it's in it goes and joins the ocean, that ocean contains that same memory. It's never lost, no matter how big the dilution you think you can try to apply. Water's fascinating like that. And then good old famous Dr. Emoto, he introduced to us the studies that showed that water even retains the memory of vibration, even the memory of thought that is projected onto it. If anyone's not familiar, Doctor, excuse me 1 second, I've got to just put my charger in. Don't want to lose you. If anyone's not familiar with Dr. Emoto, obviously check him out. But basically, done quite, very briefly, done a few experiments, a lot of experiments, where you just take 3 different vessels of water. Yeah. And what he was doing, he'd put them in separate rooms. And to one vessel of water, he'd go in and he'd think very positive thoughts, love, appreciation, purity, kindness, just thinking or speaking the thoughts to the water. I love you, grateful for you, blah, blah. He'd go into the other vessel of water and he would say very hatred thoughts or words. I hate you. You look like death. Die, whatever. The other vessel of water, he just left. Yeah. Now what he would do is he would take a droplet of that water after a week or so many days, repetitive kind of speaking to the water. He'd take a droplet onto a little a pallet or slide, and they would put that droplet underneath a microscope, and they would study the molecular structure of that water. And what that showed is the pattern that the structure formed into. And now, after studying all these different droplets, to find that whatever vessel they were speaking these words of hate to, the structure and pattern looked very ugly and deathly. The water droplets that were taken out of the vessel that had positive vibrations spoken to it and vibrations of love had very beautiful, geometric patterns. And there was one that where they would just offer a prayer to it all the time, and that looked like a snowflake type pattern structure, you see. So what this is basically showing is that how water as a spirit, as an intelligence, picks up the vibrations and the intentions of people. Now, this has always been alluded to and always been spoken of by many ancient cultures, and those that are into various spirituality pathways and walks. It's water and water prayers and water ceremony. And this is the idea behind baptism and all of this in religions. And there's so much ceremony around water because it's always been known by human beings that water is this very active, alive, intelligent spirit. And it affects so much, like they say, you know, you got these sayings when there's something going on in a certain town, it's like, oh, there's something in the waters. That's a very true and accurate assessment of any given situation. It's like when the full moon's up and various cities get high influxes in their A&E or the police stations, or they have to put certain amounts of staff on at particular weekends when the full moon's up because they know the activity is driven higher because of the moon's influence on the waters and on the people. And the waters are what form our emotions. Especially in the Western world, we're living in very kind of emotive states. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's why I say, like, just water never loses its memory. And every thought causes the release of chemicals and an electrical transmission across the brain. Here, we come across again the idea of water and electricity operating in harmony, operating in unison. The brain, as we've seen and talked about at the start, again, another organ that's composed of over 80% water. Every single thought, every brain function depends on water, but the brain is also one of the most electrical organs of the body. And that electrical system extends throughout your whole tree of neurons, the central nervous system. So the brain is just this high-tech electrical generator that's made of water. Every thought you have creates a corresponding chemical, water, and that enters your whole circulatory system. And that fluid enters every cell of your body. And that's how, like we explained last week, talking about the digestion above, as above, so below. Your thoughts become things in the body as within, so without. Your thoughts become things outside in your external reality. But the conduit in the body is the water. That kind of conduit of transformation. Yeah, the etheric thought to the chemical substance. And it's that which then flows to feed the cells. Right or wrong, good or bad. It is what it is. So that's how we say you cleanse your thoughts and you can cleanse your body. But if your thoughts are congested, stagnant, you find it hard to shift the patterns of your thoughts. Yeah, maybe your thoughts are not fluid enough. Like I say, this begins to hurt, this pressure, this stress, headaches. Drink water. Program your water. Clear the sludge. Get things moving, get things lubricated, get things hydrated before you try and achieve something, or you try to go into any form of labor with yourself. Now, there's another phase of water in science. We learned about, what was it? Liquids, solids, and gases. Yeah, the 3 phases of water. But all this kind of academic and intellectual study of water, yeah, it obviously grows. And like I say, there's many kind of institutes, universities around the world that are built and solely committed to the study of water and its properties for good reason. But there's a doctor called he wrote this book, The 4th Phase of Water. I think it's Dr. Pollock, Gerald Pollock. Yeah, and he wrote this book called The Fourth Phase of Water, which is basically saying that beyond liquid, solids, and gases, water has no other levels, which science isn't really talking about. And what it is introducing the intellectual phase of water. And this is referred to as structured water. Water molecules organize themselves into energy-charged electrical voltage, when we're talking about the energetic charge. Organize themselves into energy-charged layers, affecting their environment and the water around them. Now just think about that for a hot second. Depending on the environment that these water molecules are in, these molecules will structure themselves accordingly so that they can either fit in, or they can flow through, or they can protect their essence in whatever way is necessary, yeah, according to this environmental change around. Now, we do that as beings. We do that as human cells. Yeah, we might be in any particular environment at any particular time or season, and we will have to structure ourselves accordingly. We will build our bases. We will build our walls. We will organize our agriculture. We just bring structure to a situation or environment. This is an intelligence, which means you are cooperating, you are coercing with what is around you. Water does the same thing. So through every tiny water molecule that's running, there's a divine intelligence running through it. This occurs due to the exposure to radiant energy such as light waves. Remember, all the energy is in the light. And there's a few workshops to come that we go really deep, like we really shine some light on that situation or that idea, especially when it comes to the food and what we're eating and how the sun has an effect on us and the planet. This confirms an intelligence and an intention of water. It's another sign of intelligence. When something is carried out according to an intention, like animals operate off a very instinctive impulse. And that's what separates us from them. We have this kind of higher sentient potential. But the idea that we can stop and think on a situation and then form an intention and structure ourselves accordingly, that's what defines us in terms of a higher intellect or a higher sentient being. And that's what water does all throughout nature. In the body, this electrical charge becomes a neutralizer of toxic and harmful substances. So when the water's in the body and it has, it's comfortable, i.e. it has an abundance, yeah, it will form and structure itself accordingly depending on the environment of your body. Now we're talking about pH, because the body only knows two. Remember, there's only two poles. Everything's the same at two poles. In the body, that's acid and alkaline. So depending on the degree of alkalinity or acidity, that's a vibration. Yeah. So depending on the vibration, remember, water will act according to the vibration, structure itself according to the vibration. So that's where water will structure itself in terms of alkalinity or acidity and how it can protect any particular environment or space at one time. And it does this by an electrical charge. And as we remember from the people like Dr. Sebi and from any good healer or naturopath, we understand that when the body is highly electrically charged, pathogens cannot live. It's just like when you see one of those kind of electrical machines, yeah, and a fly goes by it and zzz, it just zaps it. Yeah, so when the body is in good harmonious balance and has a good level of alkalinity to it, it's very, very hard for any cancerous or pathogenic cells to live or to thrive in the body. Yeah, and this is where we talk about this kind of energetic electrical charge. This is what basically composes of your immune system. It's a power surge that runs through the body. In nature, this same substance is stimulating life, feeding the environment and nourishing the earth around it. This is where nature becomes very healing. You go into a natural environment and you can feel rejuvenated within minutes because you're dealing with negative ions. When you inhale these negative ions, again, it's moisture, it's vapor. You know, you go into the woods, something like that, and you can just smell the damp. That's what you can smell. It's substance. So when we talk about the flow of water, again, it's always active, always intellectually transforming itself. And one thing we know about water is its instinct is to flow, is to run. So if you spill a glass of water right now on the floor, you will watch that water create about 5 different streams, yeah, all trying to run and trying to flow. And if you look at that water 5 minutes later, you'll see that it's spread even further. It will try to absorb itself into anything and everything to give life to it, or to record, to transform itself into a life-giving property. That's the instinct of water. It flows. But while it's flowing, again, the intellectual capacity of water, while it's actually flowing, it's charging itself. Yeah, charging itself with what we just spoke about, it, that electrical energetic charge, that surge. And of course it makes sense. Oh, water, we don't understand water to be electrical now because we just explored its relationship to hydrogen and hydrogen's relationship to the sun and the sun's relationship to electricity. And we just went on that little kind of wholesome circle that, oh shit, this is all one and the same thing, just operating at different levels. But fact is, while water's flowing, it's recharging itself, it's cleansing itself, it is constantly restructuring itself. Remember, through water memory, water is constantly recording every single aspect of its environment. It's like that's why every aspect of water is transparent. It's like it can see through everything and everything can see into it. It's just a recorder. So now imagine when you go under the shower. Yeah, and there's just something about being in the shower that makes you feel charged, makes you want to sing. Even when everyone tells you you can't sing. Yeah. When everyone tells you should shut up and you crap, don't listen to them. Get in the shower. But there's something about being under that flow, that jet of water, when it hits, especially your crown and penetrates, you feel vibration and charge. How does that come out? Like an angel singing. She in my shower. I don't know if anyone's ever been under a waterfall, but again, that waterfall has always had a massive gravitational pull. Any waterfall, any natural fall, yeah, of water, anywhere water flows heavily. If you ever stood under a waterfall and felt that, or just a rock fall and felt water gushing on your head, the charge you feel is immense and amazing and something that you can only experience and not really explain. Because this water structure is so highly charged and it's restructuring itself as it runs down you and through you. And you're feeling that. You feel very godly. Even in a great kind of shower, rain shower. You ever been in a rain shower, especially when you're kids, because you're pure and you're more turned up. And you get in the rain and the rain don't bother you. You just want to be in the rain. Sometimes you just want to sit in the rain. The rain can feel so good. You just want to sit in the rain. It was Bob Marley who said, some people feel the rain, some people just get wet. Now, it's important, I think, that we touch on again the programming capacity of water. This is very, very important, especially in these times, and it's very serious. Take it how you wanna. Programming is the process of creating a set of instructions that tell a computer how to perform a task. Programming can be done using a variety of computer languages. Now, what is a computer? A computer is basically a tech hub of intelligence. That might be artificial intelligence, or it might just be like the brain is referred to as a computer, or many technological devices, or we could say all technology in our reality is based on the blueprint of the body. We know that now. It's not hard to tell. It's not hard to see. That's why even in your car, you will have the brain of the car. Yeah. Even in a computer, you'll have the microchip, which is the brain of the computer. Everything will have a memory base and a motor to keep it running. Yeah. So in the body, the brain is referred to as the central control system, the computer, the processor. And I'm talking about the brain in your head. But the idea of programming is all the same. A series of instructions given to a computer to direct it to carry out certain operations. The term code is often used to denote those kind of large operations. So when a computer is given a set of instructions, this is to carry out or to perform in a certain way. This is known as programming. And a computer is known as is anything that is basically a tech spec of intelligence that can receive information, that can process information, and that can output an outcome or a set of results. The brain is a computer because your body is full high tech. Your body is technology. Nature is the highest form of technology, can't yet be matched. Superior intelligence and processing and memory and operation, structure, function. So now, if we go back to Dr. Emoto's studies on water and the suggestions that were given to the vessels of water and how these waters responded and reacted in terms of how it changed their vibratory field and their structure. Now I just want you to think for a minute that the majority of you right now is water. So what happens if we're taking suggestions constantly from all these devices, all these medias, all these educational outlets, all these books, all these people? Think about how you feel when you see something that's alarming or scary or even happy. You feel your waters change, but because you do not process it at that level, you just feel a feeling, dread or happiness. But what's actually happening? There's something in the molecular structure of your waters that is changing structure. And you are feeling that reaction, that response of the change. You're feeling the result of that change. Again, when they say there's something in your waters or the waters become contaminated, this is very, very, very key to understanding how these suggestive realities or environmental stimuluses have a major effect on our waters. And then why we feel like crap, potentially a lot of the time. Especially if we're not flushing and replenishing the water of our cells, of our brain, of our organs, of our systems. Because your circulatory system is constantly in cycle. And if these waters are sluggish and contaminated, they're just recycling, recirculating. Add a bit more Coke, add a bit more coffee, recirculating, add a bit more medication, add a bit more medication, add a bit more news, add a bit more Trump, recirculating, add a bit more neighbor from hell, partner from hell. Yeah. We get trapped in these circles or cycles. And just before we go into delve onto the other side of it, just to remind us, there's Dr. Emoto. I think that's Palak who wrote the book, The Fourth Phase. Very interesting book. Because to understand this science, you understand yourself a little bit more. And if you've got the eye to kind of connect your dots to other areas of your reality and how this is playing out, then you'll do very well. Picking up these kind of books that really break things down, especially things that you are composed of at such a mass level. Yeah, we're talking about the indigenous peoples of the planet and the millenniums of water ceremonies, of water prayers, of water offerings. There's people right now on this planet sitting in mass on all different parts of the earth, holding space for water, putting tears, putting soul into ceremonial practices to keep our waters clean. True story. It's happening right now. They're doing it for you and we don't even know it. Again, a lot of the ancient traditions all have their water goddess, all have their water deity, their water spirits, their water ceremonial practices. Whether it's your Maya or Oshun or Noon, Hydros, or it's always been there, it will always be there, whether we're a part of it or not. Sacred tribes, text, healers, science, history, religions, all agree of the significance of the health, spiritual, mental, emotional properties of water. So how do we know which water to drink and which water not to drink? 'Tis the question. And it's difficult because, you know, with a lot of people, especially in this day and age, it's a lot more prevalent now that people, you know, always want to carry a water bottle. You know, it's kind of hitting home a lot of the time. I agree, some people do it for fashion. I see people with the same water bottle, you know, same water all day. You see them 8 hours later and, you know, only a sip's gone out of it. But it's cool. You know, we're getting somewhere. But a big question is, what water do I drink? Important question. Never tap. Never tap. Don't ever tap out. I'd rather go thirsty. Why not the tap? Well, as we're kind of doing this conversation out of Birmingham, I'll use our local water suppliers, Severn Trench Waters. I'll call them Severn Trench. I've been there a few times. Here's their quote, what you're reading. You know, quality water is at the heart of everything we do. Our objective is to provide you with the highest quality water that is good to drink. Lies! I'll tell you why. Because I've been there 3 or 4 times on trips. I used to work with the youths in schools. And I've been through the whole facility. They've showed it me. I've asked the questions, you know, and they're pointed to everything that's going on there. And what happens is, all this water that's coming from our toilets, our baths, our sinks, the drains, it's all going to be Severn Trent, all goes into these massive turbine reservoirs. Yeah, you see all the sludge getting kind of filtered out, all the nappies, all the sanitary towels, all that ugly swampy brown stuff that sits on top. They just literally filter it all out with these massive turbines, yeah, and then it goes piped into another reservoir where they're filtering more. It's like a finer filter, yeah, and then it goes into another reservoir where they start adding chemicals, hundreds of them, bleach, chemicals, to purify and clean the water. How do you purify water with chemical, with bleach? Yeah, they put a lot of bleach in to hide the smell of water. They put a lot of bleach in to hide, or chemicals to hide the taste of the stench, that trench you're letting in your home. Now, these are facts. Over 300 man-made chemicals in the tap water we drink. Over 300 man-made chemicals in the tap water that we drink. Does that sound like water purification? Just some of the general contaminants: liquefied chlorine, yeah, lead, aluminium, fluoride, arsenic, fluorosilicic acid. And we all know, you should know fluoride by now. Most famous for Hitler using it on the concentration camp victims to make them docile and passive. The idea being that if there's like 10,000 people in one space and only 100 guards, you know, if those 10 people were to wake up and decide that, no, we don't want to be here anymore, consider it anarchy or revolution. Yeah, the place becomes overthrown. But this didn't ever happen. Well, I don't know to say that, but it didn't happen enough, or it wasn't a worry. Why? Because they studied how to psychologically, how to physically, and how to chemically keep them docile and passive. And fluoride was a big, massive key to it. They used fluoride throughout the concentration camps, keeps you in a state of passiveness and submissiveness, of surrender. Then after the war, after the so-called war, when we start putting the country back together again, get over all the Irish and all the West Indians, come and build back the country, a lot of Western countries, in the piping system, somehow, some way, between then and now, they decided that, oh, let's use that fluoride in the water. Why would they possibly want to do this? And you see they've kind of changed every system as well. And you see how passive people have become, how submissive to enforcement. And especially in this time, you know, we're seeing a lot. But the reason fluoride is so dangerous to the human being, like a lot of the dangerous chemicals that are floating around the place, is because of its affinity to the pineal gland in the head. Your pineal gland being what they call the gateway to the soul, your gland of consciousness. It's in all the books, in all the scriptures, in all the spiritual teachings, in all the consciousness, in all the new age. And your pineal gland, it secretes certain chemicals, certain oils or nectars even, especially neuromelanin and melatonin. Yeah, that's that kind of melatonin's that secretion that takes you into your sleep state. And where do you go into your sleep state? You go into the astral realm or the etheric realm or the sleep realm. But it's the gateway to consciousness, and it secretes these chemicals that keeps you actively conscious and aware. Fluoride gathers at the pineal gland, and it suppresses and calcifies the pineal, meaning it suppresses its function and its ability to secrete these very, very significant chemicals to humankind and what makes us human, i.e. spirit, mind, consciousness, and body. Also with tap water, most communities up until the 60s were built with lead piping systems. Lead, again, a lot of mental diseases, a lot of respiratory problems since the 60s have been attributed to the high presence of lead in our body. And I think it was they had it in the paint and the walls, lead. Yeah. But then they found how dangerous this is as a micro metal when it gets in the body. Lead is the most least conductive metal. That's why they make the comparison of lead to gold, gold and lead. Because in alchemy, very high ancient spiritual practice, it's also spiritual practice. In alchemy, lead was the opposing extreme to gold. So if you could turn lead into gold, the most invaluable, because lead is the least conductive. And remember, a lot of our sentience, a lot of our intelligence, a lot of our high godly system is running on electricity. That's why you find a lot of copper in the brain. But if you're contaminated with lead, it's a very, very non-conductive metal, and it causes a hell of a lot of problems in the body. And most of our pipes, up until the 60s, most of these houses that were all living in the family houses, a lot of them are much older than, go back way further than the 60s. And a lot of them still contain the lead pipes. And even those that are now built with copper pipes are soldered together with lead. Now, remember what we said at the start of the presentation about what water is. It's an acid, it's a solvent. Although we don't see it or we don't notice it like that all the time, it's the universal solvent. It will erode anything. So if it's constantly going over lead at some point in its journey in the pipes, it's always picking up. Remember what we said about its memory? Even the smallest fraction of anything is retained in the water. And also the pipes contain certain angles, which is not naturally occurring. Water flows everywhere in nature, but there's nowhere in nature that has straight lines or 90-degree angles. Everything's curves. Such is Mother Nature. It's a feminine force. So everything is curves in nature, whether it's running down a tree, whether it's running down your face. It's never running down straight line and angles, because that disturbs the structure of water. Remember, it's always restructuring itself when it's flowing. A corner, a 90-degree turn or break, that's a very masculine force. Water is a very feminine spirit. Now, water remembers everything, and this is why I was just like, forget tap water. Once I learned the science of water, to a degree, not just for the fluoride, but this is why I don't even put water in my distiller. You know, people say, oh, I got a distiller and I distill tap water, it gets out the fluoride. Yeah, good. But if you ask me why I would never consider putting tap water in my distiller even, it's because I know it might take out the physical matter, but you ain't going to take out the emotions. I don't know any piece of technology that can do that in this universe. You're trying to override the technology of God. So just think about all the journeys that the water goes on, with the sinks, with the baths, with the toilets, with the pipes. Don't forget, this water is traveling through every human being as well, who is, emotionally chaotic at times, angry, frustrated, scared, fearful. And then it's getting recycled back to the trenches, who are just making a cocktail of chemicals in there, pulling out the nappies and sending it back through your pipes. So that's why I don't mess with the tap water like that. Sometimes you're gonna need it, you're gonna use it, and it's not. You know, we have to play the game to a certain degree. We're not living in the ideal heaven where we can go and take a bathe under the waterfall every morning. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes to what you're putting in and what you want going through your piping system, you can just make your own choices. Now, it isn't hard to find other options. People say, oh, bottled water any good? You know, it's better than tap water. But do read the label. Because you'll find a lot of the time now, especially what I found is in institutional buildings, universities, schools, colleges, cinemas, a lot of these places will store a certain type of water that has fluoride in them, especially the places of academics and young people growing, I found. Yeah, so always read the label. If it's got fluoride in it, just leave it, go thirsty. Or if you're really thirsty, you feel like you're going to drop then drink it. But don't make a habit of it. Make a habit of reading your labels and just checking it don't contain fluoride. Another thing with the bottled water is BPA. Bisphenol. It's basically a chemical that's in plastic that don't need to be in there. But when it's in there, it's very disharmonious to the water. The water leaches it from the plastic. And this creates a lot of problems in the body. So that's again, there are companies that have been coming onto the shelves that have been very conscious of this, and you might see things made out of BPA free. Yeah, stray that way if you can. Now you've got a wealth of water systems, filtration systems. Yeah. The carbon ones, the carbon-based ones are the best. If you're just doing like a filtration system for your side, again, I don't recommend you filter tap water. These carbon ones, these homemade kind of shelf worktop filters, they're not pulling out the fluoride, they're not pulling out the micro metals. They're just going to get the kind of thicker grudge out of it. You have got filtration systems that you can plumb into your plumbing system, ionizers and things like this. So some of them claim to strip the fluoride out of the water. Yeah. Remember, your kidneys are the most powerful technological filtering system that you have in your body, but they too need water to function. This is the one I use personally, got highly recommended in a lot of kind of respected circles. It's the Mega Home Distiller. Costs about 150 quid. Might get it a little bit cheaper, and you can get a nice glass jug with it. And it's the dog's knack. It does what it says on the tin. Like, you will pour your bottled water in there, and once it's done and it's clear, it takes a few hours to distill. It's like a hot kettle. Yeah, and basically just breaks down the water molecules, evaporates them, and then sends them through this little system here, the nozzle at the top, and then you've got a carbon sachet in there. And when it hits that and filters through the carbon and then hits the kind of cold glass jug, it turns back into water. But now it's a very, very purified form of water. Some would say it's too pure, i.e. it doesn't contain any minerals at all. It's been completely stripped, completely pure water. So you might want to remineralize your water. But if you want to get pure water, you use a distiller. Pure water of that nature can be good for a couple of weeks, because water, because of its charge, it wants to bind to minerals always. Yeah. So a lot of your body's filled with a lot of inorganic minerals. You see what I'm saying? A lot of inorganic minerals from the food we eat, from the air we breathe. But drinking distilled water for a couple of weeks will strip and pull those inorganic minerals. But then you don't want to go too far and go on it for life, because then you'll start pulling all the natural minerals out of your body. So they say. So it's good to use it in bouts, or you just want to use it and remineralize your water. You can get some good Volvic kind of mineral-based supplements that you can put in your water. Yeah. Squirt a bit of a juice, lemon, lime in there, alkalize it, charge it up. For me, still, hands down, my body just resonates with natural spring water. Like I said, the earth is a natural filtering system. Yeah, it's a natural distilling system. The body as a planet, as an organism, as a system, naturally does that. When water's running through the earth, it's running, it's flowing, it's charging, it's cleansing, it's cleaning, it's remembering, it's taking in all the harmonious kind of sites that it does when it's going past all the minerals and all the rocks in nature. So if you can access a natural spring anywhere, or if you're not too far from the Malvern Hills, which is probably the closest to the West Midlands, yeah, just get up there and just fill up your BPA-free jugs and containers. Do you know what I mean? And knock yourself out with that natural spring water. It's been through all the rocks, been through all the vibrations. Remember, water contains and records the vibrations. Yeah, so when you apply that to a natural land, a mountain that's just full of life and nature and has been for thousands of years, and people, they're always very ceremonial and very ritualistic spaces and places, especially where water is. Yeah, so I trust nature over everything, personally. Some people might have their other preferences, but I just go and fill up a natural spring, any natural spring I can. And it's always amazing. You know. And again, how to mineralize your water, the water you choose to use, regardless of where you get it from. Remember the programming. Water is crystalline. There's a magnificent book by Carly Nuday, called Water Codes. Get it, read it, breaks it down, complete high-tech science. But I love it because they're very spiritual with it, and the breakdown how water is, which we've known a long time, but when you see it written scientifically and broken down scientifically, it's, it just adds another kind of a bit of weight to when you're trying to explain to somebody else. Because a lot of people, especially in this world, are like, no, where's the science? We've got to see the science. Well, look where the science gets us locked down. You know what I mean? But this book really explains the crystalline nature of water. And when I say crystalline, it's basically explaining how water is just a liquid crystal. Shares the same structure as crystals do, but in a flowing fashion. And you probably notice when you're standing on the seashore, on the beach, and you're looking out onto the sea, and the light's just right, and you're looking on the surface of the water, and you can just see crystals and diamonds just hovering on the sea surface. Water shows you what it is. Again, water's clear. It makes things very clear. But sometimes it's so clear, like we look the other way. We think we're not actually seeing what we're seeing. But water is a crystal. Crystals and other precious stones are known for their programming potential. That's what they're used for the programming. Yeah. Remember how much water we're based off. Now, this makes sense when we realize that, man, this system or these, whoever they are, they're so into the programming. Yeah, we know that we are being programmed, even when we don't know we're being programmed. Yeah. That is the nature of the beast or whatever, or whoever. Programming, influencing us, suggestive ideas, subliminal messaging. We're so easy to program because we're made of the most programmable substance. Remember, water is a high-tech intelligence. It records and processes everything that is suggested to it or it sees. This is why we're so programmable, but at the same time, anything that is so programmable, if you're made by this crystalline, that means you're a programmer. So program the water. And now this explains all the millenniums and ancient civilizations of water ceremony, water prayer. They all knew we can charge this water. We can put our intention into the water. We can reform its molecular structure to respond according to our intention. It's an intelligence, it's a spirit. So just like Dr. Emoto showed us in the studies, and there's been billions of studies done since then that followed that, but you can just put little notes of love, gratitude, honor, praise, prayer on your water. Set your intention. That's the best way to restructure your water into that of a kind of a loving fluid, a healing medicinal tonic. You can put crystals in the water. You can use precious stones that ward off any kind of negative EMF waves or energy. Just science. It's not spooky. It's not mysticism. It's just science. The stones actually do this. Water is that physical, scientific, spiritual substance. You can use use tools, use things, put your water on it, things that resonate at a high vibration. Examples like a Flower of Life coaster, for example. Yeah, put botanicals, herbs, flowers in and around your water. You can be the programmer of the water. That's the point I'm trying to make. So when you are mineralizing it, and if you do have to deal with an undesirable source or form of water, make sure you put your touch on it or put your love on it. You see what I'm saying? And then take it a step further. Remember, and always remember, that you're 70 to 90% water. So you can just program yourself. We call that prayer or meditation. You can restructure your thoughts. You can restructure yourself at a molecular level. You can restructure yourself at a chemical level, a physical level. You just got to take the time, take the patience, and take the focus, and set your intentions. Quiet the noise. Remember, all your thoughts are a vibration. They correspond to a particular vibration resonance. That vibration is being absorbed by the waters. Those waters are feeding every single one of your cells, and they are also accumulating to your whole vibratory output, which determines your input, what comes in, or the feedback you're getting. So just take time to give yourself, that bit of love and regenerative mindfulness. And just remember these kind of hints and tips every time you're going to take a glass of water. And hopefully that will be more frequent. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, we'll leave that there. I hope we kind of just managed to really get a real deep dive into the water without being too long-winded in any particular area. I should remind you, we covered the physiological aspects and importance of water. We covered it mentally, scientifically, historically, religiously, spiritually. We covered it from a crystalline aspect. We covered it from the science. We covered it from the sun and the moon and back. Yeah, all in a little space. We've covered what waters are good to drink, why it's not good to drink. We've covered the areas of water that the government are offering us, with a few conditions that create a few conditions within.